Good morning or afternoon or evening, students and families. This is your teacher, Mr. Leonard. Now, I know that students, one of your favorite parts of the day when we're in class is read aloud because it allows us to enjoy some really awesome stories and talk about it a little bit. So I want to continue that tradition while you're all at home by these videos. So today we're going to start a new story called James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. It's actually my favorite book to teach as a teacher, and believe it or not, it was my favorite story back in elementary school in 1988. That's a really long time ago. So, as I read, you have two jobs, and the first job is the most important by far. I just want you to enjoy the story. My hope is that you're going to love the story just as much as I did, and I do. And then your second job, which is going to help you enjoy the story, is to do a really good job of making a picture in your mind, visualize the characters and setting. Every once in a while, you're going to see a highlighted yellow word, and these are for words that you might need a little extra explanation to understand. And I'm going to do my best job to explain them quickly so it doesn't interrupt the story. Before we get started, I wanted to show you which country the story takes place in. If you look at the top, it says England. I'm sure most of you have heard of this country. It's in the continent of Europe, and it's in the United Kingdom, which contains 4 countries. One of them is England. So, without further ado, Chapter 1 of James and the Giant Peach. Until he was 4 years old, James Henry Trotter had had a happy life. He lived peacefully with his mother and father in a beautiful house beside the sea. There were always plenty of other children for him to play with, and there was the sandy beach for him to run about on and the ocean to paddle in. It was the perfect life for a small boy. Then, one day, James's mother and father went to London, that's a city in England, to do some shopping, and there a terrible thing happened. Both of them suddenly got eaten up, in full daylight, mind you, and on a crowded street, by an enormous, angry rhinoceros, which had escaped from the London Zoo. Now this, as you can well imagine, was a rather nasty experience for 2 such gentle parents. But in the long run, it was far nastier for James than it was for them. Their troubles were all over in a jiffy. That means really quickly. They were dead and gone in 35 seconds flat. Poor James, on the other hand, was still very much alive, and all at once he found himself alone and frightened in a vast, unfriendly world. The lovely house by the seaside had to be sold immediately, and the little boy, carrying nothing but a small suitcase containing a pair of pajamas and a toothbrush, was sent away to live with his 2 aunts. Or aunts, people pronounce it differently. Their names were Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker, and I am sorry to say that they were both really horrible people. They were selfish and lazy and cruel, and right from the beginning they started beating poor James for almost no reason at all. They never called him by his real name, but always referred to him as, "You disgusting little beast," or "You filthy nuisance." Nuisance means annoying. Or "You miserable creature." And they certainly never gave him any toys to play with, or any picture books to look at. His room was as bare as a prison cell. Bare means empty, so it means his room probably only had a bed, no other furniture, and nothing on the wall. They lived, Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and now James as well, in a queer ramshackle house on the top of a high hill in the south of England. Ramshackle means the house looked so old that it looked like it was going to collapse at any moment. The hill was so high that from almost anywhere in the garden, James could look down and see for miles and miles across a marvelous landscape of woods and fields, and on a very clear day, if he looked in the right direction, he could see a tiny gray dot far away on the horizon, which was the house that he used to live in with his beloved mother and father. And just beyond that, he could see the ocean itself, a long thin streak of blackish blue, like a line of ink beneath the rim of the sky. That's a really beautiful paragraph right there, and it does a really good job describing the setting. So if you want, hit pause on the video and reread it so you can make a really good picture in your mind. And if not, let's just keep going with the story. But James was never allowed to go down off the top of that hill. Neither Aunt Sponge nor Aunt Spiker could ever be bothered to take him out herself, not even for a small walk or a picnic, and he certainly wasn't permitted to go alone. "The nasty little beast will only get into mischief if he goes out of the garden," Aunt Spiker had said. Mischief means trouble, so they were worried he'd get in trouble. And terrible punishments were promised him, such as being locked up in the cellar with the rats for a week, if he even so much as dared to climb over the fence. The garden, which covered the whole of the top of the hill, was large and desolate, and the only tree in the entire place, apart from a clump of dirty old laurel bushes at the far end, was an ancient peach tree that never gave any peaches. Desolate means empty, so it means there really wasn't anything in the garden besides that one tree and some dirty old bushes. And ancient means really, really old, so it means the tree was so old that it didn't grow peaches anymore. There was no swing, no seesaw, no sandpit, and no other children were ever invited to come up the hill to play with poor James. There wasn't so much as a dog or a cat around to keep him company. And as time went on, he became sadder and more lonely, and he used to spend hours every day standing at the bottom of the garden, gazing wistfully at the lovely but forbidden world of woods and fields and ocean that was spread out below him like a magic carpet. Gazing wistfully means he was looking out and really, really wishing he were down there by the beautiful ocean and woods and fields, but he couldn't because it was a forbidden world, and forbidden means that he wasn't allowed to have it or be there. So that is the end of chapter 1. I hope you really, really enjoyed it. Now, before we go, as you know, we're going to use Google Classroom just a little bit. So I have you set up on there. I emailed you the other day. And what I'd like you to do, and I don't want you to spend a long time on this, I just want you to do it well. This is going to help me see if you understood the story. And I want you to answer this question. What one character trait would you use to best describe each of the 3 main characters in chapter 1? Now, I want to remind you, we talked about this in class, there's a difference between feelings and traits. Feelings are an adjective that describes an emotion that could change minute by minute, hour by hour, or day by day, whereas traits are adjectives that describe how someone is either all the time or most of the time. So you should use a character trait adjective to describe each of the 3 main characters. It might be different for each character. Maybe it's the same for a couple of the characters. And as we always talk about, we must write in complete sentences. And in your sentence, I want you to make sure you include the character's name, so I know who you're talking about, the character trait that describes them, and why you chose that trait, I should say. As we talk about in class, you always want to use evidence to back up your answer. So use evidence from the text to explain why you chose that particular trait. This assignment is due on Wednesday, so it gives you a couple days to do it. And again, don't spend a super long time on it, but do it well. And then I will upload chapter 2 on Thursday. I hope you're all doing super well. I really, truly miss you all. I wish we were in class, but we're going to do our best while we're all stuck at home, safe and sound, to keep the learning going. All right, everyone. Buenas noches.